On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 souls lifted off from Kuala Lumpur bound for Beijing and simply ceased to exist. No wreckage field. No mayday call. No black box washing ashore with answers. For 12 years, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 has stood as the single greatest unsolved mystery in the history of commercial aviation. But in the last 18 months, something has shifted. New search vessels have gone back into the Indian Ocean. A retired aerospace engineer claims he can track the plane using ham radio signals bounced across the planet. And investigators who once dismissed the case as unsolvable are now saying, quietly, that the truth may finally be within reach. Today, we're going to walk through exactly what's new, what's changed, and why some of these discoveries are unsettling enough to make even seasoned aviation experts uneasy. Let's set the scene, because the strangeness of MH370 only makes sense once you understand how impossible its disappearance actually was. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, registration 9M, MRO, one of the most heavily instrumented, most redundantly connected airliners ever built. It carried 227 passengers from 14 countries and 12 Malaysian crew members. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran with more than 18,000 flying hours, and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid were at the controls. Everything about the flight, in its opening hour, was routine. At 1:07 a.m., the aircraft's onboard maintenance system sent its regular data burst to Malaysia Airlines engineering teams: fuel levels, altitude, position, no anomalies. 12 minutes later, as the jet approached the boundary between Malaysian and Vietnamese air traffic control, the last human words anyone would hear from the cockpit came through. "Good night, Malaysian 370.
Standard.
Unremarkable. Then nothing. Within minutes, the plane's transponder, the device that broadcasts identity and altitude to civilian radar, went dark. Whoever or whatever caused that could not have been an accident of coincidence. Investigators have long noted that the communication systems failed in a sequence that doesn't match any previously recorded mechanical fault. And yet the aircraft did not fall out of the sky. Military radar, later declassified, showed it turning sharply back across the Malay Peninsula, threading past Penang Island, then heading out over the Andaman Sea, flying for more than an hour with its identifying systems switched off, seen by machines, but invisible to the world. Here's where the case takes its strangest turn, and it's a detail that still surprises people who think they know the MH370 story well. Even after every conventional tracking system went silent, the aircraft kept talking, in a sense, to a satellite operated by the British company Inmarsat, parked in geostationary orbit over the Indian Ocean. Every hour, almost like a heartbeat, the plane's satellite data unit automatically pinged the satellite. Routine handshake that most passengers would never know existed. Engineers in London realized they could extract something remarkable from those handshakes. The Doppler shift, a tiny change in radio frequency caused by the relative motion between the aircraft and the satellite. It's the same physics behind why an ambulance siren sounds different as it passes you. Using this method, something that had genuinely never been attempted before on this scale, Inmarsat's team reconstructed a series of arcs representing where the plane could have been at each hourly ping. The final arc, the seventh, sliced through the remote southern Indian Ocean, thousands of kilometers from any coastline, in one of the most desolate stretches of water on Earth. That single breakthrough, turning satellite noise into a flight path, became the backbone of the entire search effort. It also meant that whoever was flying MH370 continued for roughly 6 more hours after vanishing from radar, deep into the night, in a state of eerie, deliberate silence. For years the case went cold. The original underwater search, led by the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, scoured over 120,000 square kilometers of seafloor and found nothing. A follow-up search by the marine robotics firm Ocean Infinity in 2018 covered still more ocean, and also came up empty. Families were left with nothing but a scatter of confirmed debris, a flaperon on Réunion Island, fragments on the coasts of Mozambique and South Africa, physical proof the plane had broken apart in the ocean, but no coordinates for where. Then, in early 2025, something changed. Ocean Infinity signed a new no-find, no-fee agreement with the Malaysian government. 15,000 square kilometers of fresh seabed, targeted using updated drift modeling and years of accumulated debris analysis, with a $70 million payout on the table only if wreckage is actually located. It was the clearest signal yet that officials believed they finally had a better idea of where to look. The company deployed in 2 phases, a short trial run in March 2025, then a longer campaign spanning the very end of 2025 into January 2026. By the time its vessels pulled out of the search zone on January 23, 2026, Ocean Infinity had logged more than 150 cumulative days at sea since 2018 and mapped upward of 140,000 square kilometers of seafloor, an area larger than some countries, using sonar technology precise enough to spot debris the size of a small car sitting on the ocean floor. And once again, nothing. Malaysia's Air Accident Investigation Bureau confirmed to families on March 8, 2026, 12 years to the day since the disappearance, that no confirmed wreckage had been found. Ocean Infinity's CEO, Oliver Plunkett, didn't frame it as a dead end. He said that ruling out a search zone this large, with equipment this advanced, still narrows the puzzle for everyone working the case, and that the company's commitment to finding MH370 hasn't ended. In fact, Malaysia's cabinet has since extended its agreement with Ocean Infinity through June 2027, with a plan to resume searching the remaining unexplored slice of that 15,000 square kilometer zone, roughly 7,400 square kilometers, when weather conditions improve later this year. For families who have waited over a decade, it's a brutal kind of hope. Renewed effort, still no answer. While Ocean Infinity works the seafloor with sonar, a very different kind of investigation has been unfolding almost entirely online, and it's arguably the most talked about new discovery of the last few years. Richard Godfrey, a retired aerospace engineer and a leading voice among the independent researchers who've spent a decade poring over MH370 data, has spent years developing a technique using something called WSPR, weak signal propagation reporter technology, originally built by amateur radio hobbyists to test how far their signals could travel around the globe. The idea, in plain terms, is this: millions of these low-power amateur radio signals crisscross the planet every day, bouncing off the ionosphere. When a large metal object like an airplane passes through one of those signal paths, it can, in theory, cause a tiny, detectable disturbance, a break in an otherwise unbroken transmission. Godfrey's controversial claim is that by combing through archived WSPR data from the night of March 7th to 8th, 2014, he can reconstruct disturbances that trace out a flight path for MH370, one that diverges from the Inmarsat-derived arcs in some places and reinforces them in others. It's important to be honest about where this theory stands. WSPR-based tracking of a specific aircraft has never been independently validated by aviation authorities, and many scientists remain skeptical that the technique can isolate a single plane's signature from the noise of everyday radio propagation. Godfrey himself has acknowledged the pushback and published follow-up papers responding to criticism point by point. But what makes this genuinely newsworthy isn't that it's proven, it's that it represents the first entirely new category of evidence to enter the MH370 conversation in years, independent of both satellite data and sonar. If it holds up under further scrutiny, it could meaningfully narrow the search zone. If it doesn't, it's still forced investigators to re-examine assumptions they hadn't questioned since 2014. Strip away the theories and conspiracy talk, and what remains is a set of facts that are, frankly, still hard to reconcile. The turn back over the Malay Peninsula was too precise, too controlled, to have been the result of a random system failure. Multiple investigators have noted it bears the signature of deliberate, manual piloting. The systematic loss of communications equipment, in sequence, doesn't cleanly match any previously documented case of electrical fire, decompression, or bird strike. And the final, steep descent implied by the last burst of satellite data, far faster than a controlled glide, suggests the aircraft may have entered the water in a high-speed, largely uncontrolled state, which would help explain why the debris field has been so difficult to locate, A violent impact scatters wreckage far more widely and breaks it into pieces too small for sonar to easily distinguish from ordinary seafloor geology. None of this proves intent. It also doesn't rule it out. Investigators have examined Captain Zahari's background extensively, his home flight simulator, his personal life, his psychological profile from colleagues and family, and found nothing that meets the legal threshold of definitive evidence. The official Malaysian and Australian reports have stopped short of assigning blame, largely because, without the wreckage and flight recorders, there is no way to distinguish between mechanical catastrophe, a slow and specific decompression event, or human intervention. Compare MH370 to Air France Flight 447, which disappeared over the Atlantic in 2009. Investigators there knew almost exactly where to look, and it still took 2 years of searching before the wreckage and black boxes were recovered. MH370 disappeared in one of the most remote, least mapped stretches of ocean on the planet, with only an indirect, hourly satellite ping to reconstruct its path, and even that path spans a search corridor thousands of kilometers long. The search zone isn't a needle in a haystack. It's closer to a needle somewhere along an entire coastline. What's changed, then, isn't that scientists have suddenly cracked the case. It's that 3 independent lines of investigation, physical sonar search, satellite Doppler reconstruction, and now speculative radio signal analysis, are converging on overlapping, though not identical, regions of ocean for the first time. Malaysia's government, which was criticized in the early years of the investigation for withholding radar data and moving slowly, has in the past 2 years shown a noticeably more transparent posture, publishing search updates, briefing families directly, and extending funding rather than quietly letting the case go cold. As of mid-2026, the picture looks like this. Ocean Infinity's vessels are expected to return to the final unsearched slice of the priority zone once weather conditions in the southern Indian Ocean improve, likely in the window between November and April, under an agreement now running through June 2027. Independent researchers continue to publish and refine their whisper-based reconstructions, inviting scrutiny from the broader scientific community rather than shying away from it. And families of the 239 people still unaccounted for continue to press governments, not for spectacle, but for the same thing they've asked for since the beginning: a confirmed location, a recovered flight recorder, and an explanation grounded in evidence rather than speculation. 12 years on, MH370 remains a stark reminder of how much of our planet is still genuinely unmapped, and how a machine built with layers of redundant, satellite-linked technology can still vanish so completely that finding it becomes one of the largest engineering challenges in modern history. Whether the next search phase or the next radio signal breakthrough finally closes this case, or simply adds another data point to a mystery that keeps evolving, is something only the ocean can answer. What do you think actually happened to MH370? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see how this story develops as the next search phase begins, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.